All right, everyone. Welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Barber from Spanish Fort PD. He has 30 years total in law enforcement. Welcome to the show, Chief Barber.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. So give us a little bit of background. You spent 23 years at your previous agency, and now you've been at Spanish Fort for the last 6, 7 years, correct?
That's right. I mean, so started in 1996. I'm feeling old when I say that. 23 years with Mobile PD. So it's an agency that's adjacent to my current one. A bigger agency, but about 500 plus police officers over there. I ran the gamut. I was started off in patrol like everybody does. Started off there, went to narcotics, spent a lot of years working narcotics, drug task force, DEA, promoted out from there, CID, back to patrol, back as administrative lieutenant, captain over a precinct, making the rounds. Ended up as a major with Mobile Police Department. At different times, I had all patrol division, which would have about 300 officers under me. And my last assignment was in charge of investigative operations for the city.
Mm.
Mobile is a pretty high crime city, and so we stayed busy for our size. While I was there, I was able to go back to school, finish out my bachelor's degree in criminal justice, master's in business administration, and then attended the FBI National Academy in 2016. Uh, Things worked out just right after 23 plus years there. This job opened up here as to be a chief of police, much smaller agency, less crime. But what I found was this agency and many other agencies, and I'm in Baldwin County, the county right next to where I worked in Mobile, two different counties. We're kind of a bedroom community for Mobile. Law enforcement in Baldwin County started off kind of a rural law enforcement, rapidly growing here. The cities are growing, the county's growing, things are changing. And so I thought it'd be nice to be a part of something that's new.
Mm.
This department is a new department. 30 years ago is when it was created. Didn't exist before then. We're only 32 officers strong, so not a big department, but we're constantly adding officers. I thought this was an opportunity to come over here, put my spin, use all the experience I gained from a bigger agency, the professionalism I learned, understanding some of the challenges that can be presented as you have growth, and then work here. And so, been here 6 plus years, and it's been a phenomenal job. I can tell you, in Mobile at one time, I had 300 police officers under me in patrol. Had a lot of people under me, but it's different when you sit at the head of the table, and having just 32 police officers is more challenging than being a major when you have people above you, people below you, and you're kind of following somebody else's vision when you're implementing your own vision into a new department that needs a lot of change and a lot of direction. So it's been a lot of wins, some challenges that we're still going through. And I know today we're talking about officer wellness and a couple of different facets of it, something I've been very passionate about for some years. Even when I was with Mobile, I helped implemented their physical fitness program before I left, and that was kind of fresh on my mind when I got here. And so one of the first things I started looking at was how can we make our officers more physically fit, mentally fit, and make a more inclusive work environment where we can retain them because of the stressors that we deal with in the job.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And when you said you started in you said 1996
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that you felt old saying that, I related to that so much because now all the kids are saying that if you're born in the 1900s, you're like ancient, and
I
I
assume,
fall in that. Yeah.
yeah.
But I appreciate your sharing your background. And my first question for you is, what is your strategy, or what was your strategy walking into a new agency and sharing and starting to implement new ideas? I have some chiefs that say, like, you start off as a chief and you don't really want to make changes. You don't really want to rattle anything. You kind of just want to let things, ride for a little while. And then I have some chiefs that come in and they're like, no, like I'm excited to make some of these changes and to, start building relationships with my people. So, what was your strategy coming into a new organization and sharing some of those new ideas?
Yeah, shock and awe. So it was going to be the latter. It was an agency that had a lot of good men and women that worked here. And they will say that they needed a significant change.
Mm.
And that's why I was brought in. I was an outsider. You know from talking to other chiefs and sheriffs, outsiders have a hard time when they come into an agency. Everybody knows each other. They most often want to see somebody within the ranks to take on that new position. There wasn't somebody that was really qualified internally. They had a chief that had been here for 20 years. He became the chief. I think there was two officers here.
Mm,
And so he was the most senior person and he stayed here quite some time. But I think you get stagnant after a while. And the department needed new ideas. It needed to change. The mayor and the council for the city wanted to do something different. And so I can tell you that when I interviewed for this job, one, I didn't need a job. I was already a major with Mobile, sitting where I needed to be sitting. And I was pretty blunt about, hey, if you are happy with what you're doing, do not hire me.
mm,
If that's what you want to do, do not hire me. But I can bring a lot of those experiences, a lot of ideas. Here's my background. And so we really had that conversation. The mayor and I had a conversation about being an outsider. There's going to be resistance. I said, I anticipate that we're going to lose some officers here in the first couple years because we're going to professionalize this department. We're going to get it to where it needs to be. And I need your support. And he said, you have my support. And so, Paige, I'll tell you this and had advice from a lot of mentors. I'll share this. My brother, who's my older brother, he was at one time the chief of police in Mobile.
mm,
So a very good mentor to have about the challenges. And we worked together in Mobile for a long time. And other people that I trusted about, hey, what would you do? And I was told, hey, you have a honeymoon period. When you come in as a new chief, the city administration, they're behind you. They hired you. There's going to be part of that department that's looking for that change. And so you have a very short period of time to implement change rapidly before that honeymoon period's over. And so I did come in and I found that we had 65 pages of policy and procedure here for a police department. We had 600 plus when I left Mobile. We're at 600 plus now. We're accredited now. We're one of the only 14 or 15 police departments in the state of Alabama, here in Spanish Fort that is accredited nationally. I came
mm.
from an accredited agency. And so I was bringing in a lot of professionalism. I'll share this that within the first 2 years, about half the police department, I flipped. It
Wow.
was that much change. And so it was one of those you have to get on board. If you do that, you have a position here, you have to follow the rules. If you don't, you have to find somewhere else to go. And we lost a lot of officers that, in my opinion, needed to go. A lot of them left law enforcement, period, because I do believe one bad apple will ruin the bunch. And so I worked quite hard for the first couple of years to remove those that were cancerous, that were against change. And then now here we are 6 years late, 6 years in, we went almost 2 years up until December. We had nobody leave the department. No vacancies, were fully staffed. And in December, the only reason we lost anybody, we had two retirements, and that's what you want. And
Yeah.
so we've done a good job now of hiring the right people. We're changing the work environment, creating a culture here where people are now staying, and that's what we're trying to do.
Wow. It takes a lot of confidence to come in and say, hey, if you want things to stay how they are, I'm not the one. Like I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna make meaningful change because I think a lot of people would say whatever you want. Like I don't have to ruffle feathers. I'll do whatever you want. But for you to say, hey, if that's what you want, that's not me, takes a lot of confidence. And I also appreciated you saying that you want the right people. We know that hiring and retention is really challenging right now, and a lot of chiefs struggle with that. It's like, how do you lose people and run short? And I think the consensus, at least with the individuals I've talked to, is we would rather be short and have the right people than be fully staffed and have the wrong people. So I appreciated you mentioning that. But I did want to start talking a little bit about some of those changes. So you
Sure.
mentioned earlier that you came in and said, okay, physical fitness is something that we want to focus on, we want to prioritize. It's something that you did at your previous agency. Why is this something that you were so passionate about? And what were those first steps to creating a physical fitness program that you implemented that were successful?
Yeah, so I can talk about Alabama. That's where I've been for my entire career. It did never make sense to me that, to be a police officer, to go to the police academy, you have physical fitness standards. Now they're not even that hard. I mean, it's a mile and a half in 15 minutes and 28 seconds, 22 push-ups in a minute, 25 sit-ups in a minute, and a small little obstacle course that you have to complete. You have to do it. If you can't do it, hands down, you cannot graduate the police academy. And that's what we do. Bare minimum standards, not gender specific, not age specific or assignment specific. And then for whatever reason, once you graduate the police academy, okay, you have to go qualify every year. You have to go to these classes every year. You have to have CEUs, but there's nothing to say that you have to maintain some level of physical fitness. We really worry about our qualifications, make sure we're proficient with our weapons, but we're most likely, and we all go through it in law enforcement, to have physical encounters where we have a subject that's resisting arrest.
Mm.
We are constantly in a position where it's mundane, it's middle of the night, you're just in your car, you try to make a traffic stop, and now you're in a car chase, and a guy bails out of the vehicle. And so all of a sudden we have these things that are happening so rapidly, and we do nothing to institute a standard of physical fitness. And I've always been against that.
Mm.
I always pushed for it in Mobile, and we over the years I was there, we started it, stopped it, started it, stopped it. And when I was leaving Mobile, we had started again, then COVID came in and it shut it down over there. So it was really fresh in my mind when I got here.
Wow. Yeah, and I've had this conversation a few times and I've always asked that question. Why are there standards and why does everyone come out of the academy in the best shape of their life and then that's it?
Yeah,
And there have been a lot of conversations where, and I don't know if I want to say fear is the right word, but let's just go with that. And, if we can find a better alternative, we will. But I think that it goes back to what we were saying before is like the fear of losing people, like implementing something where people might not be able to reach that standard because there hasn't been a standard. And so I know that there have been some chiefs that have done almost like a ladder type approach of like, hey, we're going to have a standard, but we're going to build up to what that ultimate standard is so that we can, help build people up and bring them along. But it always has been a question mark for me too of like, why not? Why is this something that's not mandatory?
that's right. And so, you can talk about some of the overall reasons why we do this and in general sense. And it's the classes I've been to, the training I've been to that kind of reinforce it to me. We know officers that are more physically fit, less sick usage for their time, right?
Mhm.
They're less prone to injury. When they have to deploy force against somebody that's resisting arrest, they actually use less force
Mhm.
and it looks better because they have technique. What you see a lot of times when these officer videos emerge and it's just absolutely ugly, you have officers that are really not trained properly. You have officers that are not physically fit. And so we have injuries that occur to the officer, injuries that occur to the suspect that can be overcome if we just had better physical fitness. We know about the issues with our life expectancy because of the way we eat. It's poor, that
Mhm.
whole deal. We work too many hours. We're again sedentary for so many hours a day, and then you're straight into a stress situation. We
Yep.
know as well that, when you're physically stressed, you're not thinking as clear. So even the worst situation, when you have to start making these decisions, life and death decisions, if you're bailing out of that vehicle and you're running 100, 200 yards, and now you encounter a suspect and you have to deploy deadly force, well, if you're barely breathing and you're struggling physically, you're not processing mentally as much as you should be. The best person in shape is already dealing with it. But I think we're putting ourselves at a disadvantage when we're not doing things that would just help us do our job better.
Yeah. Yeah. And the saying that you don't rise to the level of, what is it? You don't rise to the level of opportunity, you fall to the level of your training.
Mhm.
Or if you don't rise to the level of circumstance, you fall to the level of your training. And so, um, to your point, if you are not proactively training these things, then when something happens, you're going to fall back to whatever training it is that you have. You're not going to rise to the level that you need to automatically. Of course, there's going to be adrenaline and things that go on, but I think it's important to remember proactive efforts when it comes to every aspect of wellness, and I
Mhm.
think that a lot of times when we're looking at, and we can look at each pillar of wellness, a lot of times we're really reactive with these things. And so how can we put that effort on the front end so that you don't pay for it on the back end?
Completely agree.
Yeah. Um, Did you get, so coming in, I know you're an outsider coming in, you're like, we're going to make this change. We're going to start prioritizing things. We're going to start changing policy. We're going to start setting standards that we think everyone should be able to rise to the level of. Did you, I know you said you lost half of the organization, so I'm assuming that you did get some pushback on this.
Yes, I did.
But how, maybe the question is, how did you get the buy-in from the people who did stay? And obviously now, 6 years later, you guys are now in a really good spot and you've been able to retain and you've been able to hire. So what is the message or the training that you have where you've been able to get that buy-in and that participation?
You know, you have those that are believers. And so I think that there were officers and even ranking officers that were here that knew things needed to change. I mean, there was quite a few that wanted the change. They knew that they were not where they needed to be professionally. They sensed the lack of policy and procedure. And the worst thing is because, when you don't have policy procedure and you're supposed to be doing it, it's a disadvantage for our officers when you don't have it black and white in paper. And so we did have those that were here wanting to change, and I needed their support because the ones that were fighting against it, you had to overcome it. At some point, it went from maybe a 50-50 split to where they were being knocked off, the ones that needed to go they became part of the minority. They had less voice there. They had less people that were, supporting the anti-change type of thing here, the change. And so you finally were starting to see them just starting to fall off. Not everybody in those first 2 years were fired by no means. A lot of them on their own saw the writing on the wall, said, I just need to go ahead and go somewhere else. I'm not going to fit here. So culture, as you know, takes really a whole generation to instill, but you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I did come in with that shock and awe where this is what it's going to be. It was a lot of individual conversations. It was conversations with different groups of officers from the squads to our leadership teams about what is the standard going forward. And so I am lucky that I survived. I mean, I would say that because I could very well, I think there was pretty good bets that I would not make it past, a year or 2 years max and it would be gone. And so I'm blessed that, the right people stayed. And then as we were hiring new people, I was very much looking at the ones that we were bringing in. Would they fall in line with the vision, the goals, and the mission statement for our department?
Mm.
And luckily made really good hires that have helped us, get us to the position we are today.
Yeah. Have you heard of the 18% tipping point?
I don't know. I have
Have you
not.
heard of this?
No.
So Simon Sinek talks about this, but the idea is it's like your level of influence, right? And there's studies that show that you really just need like 18% to make that change. And then that is a ripple effect or a domino effect from there. And so a lot of times and when I have conversations, there's this question of like, well, what if no one participates? What if no one does these things? What if no one gets on board? And it's like you don't need every single person within an organization to be on board with something. Really, you need 18%, which is a small percentage within an organization, right? You need 18% to start, making that momentum moving forward. And so you said you lost 50%, which means you had much more than 18% to start making that positive change. But I think to your point, you have to start somewhere and understand that there are going to be people who do influence the organization in a positive way. And you don't need the entire organization to be bought in all at once. You can start small and then you can build on that. And it does take time, but you can get there over time.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. I did want to go back to one thing that you said that I thought was important to know because you and I talked about this offline.
Sure.
And this is a really long process that happens. But you said earlier, we can see how these things are going to impact sick time. We can see how these things are going to impact injuries. And so your goal is over time being able to measure the outcomes of the efforts that you're putting in. And so over a long period of time, really trying to gauge, are these efforts reducing absenteeism? Are they reducing sick time? Are they reducing injuries so that you can understand the efficacy of the efforts that you're putting in? And I thought that that was really cool and really needed I think that for a long time, we've only looked at engagement and participation with things. But I think that we can raise that bar and we can ask ourselves, are these efforts working and
Yeah.
how are they working? And so I wanted to kind of circle back to that because I know that that's something that's, on the horizon for you guys to really be tracking those outcomes.
Yeah, and I don't think we're there, because we are only, even though we're 6 years in, that sounds like a long time, but it's not.
Yeah.
What I find interesting is when I implemented the program, and I'll tell you this, I think it was the second order I put out when I was here.
Mm,
And it was within the first 1 week, 2 weeks that I was here, I published it because I knew this was not going to be received well. It's just what ingrained in law enforcement. There is no other agency in my region that's making their people do a physical fitness test every year. And so when I implemented it here, even the Mobile one, when it was being implemented, it was start, stop, and it was never really got fully pushed off the ground. And again, as I was coming over here, they stopped it again. And so I knew it was not going to be received well. It was not received well in Mobile. I mean, it just was not. And so I wanted to do it early and start working on it. And so when we started testing, we were only having 1/4 of our department pass, 1/4 of the department actually passed the test. And so we've looked at it, we've tweaked it, we've looked at, are we too much on certain areas? And we have done many different things to try to get the pass rate higher. And it's been a struggle. I mean, it's been a struggle. We had a foundation that was created, a 501(c)(3). They helped supporting this thing where it was small, but like if you pass, you got $100 gift certificate for a pair of new running shoes.
yeah.
I had them use foundation money to go, okay, if you didn't pass, we'll pay for the first two personal training lessons. We used the foundation money to pay for their gym memberships. Then they were like, "Well, I don't want to go to a gym." So I took one of the rooms in our police department and got gym equipment donated. So good, you can use this. And so you're constantly trying to overcome these different roadblocks where people are just putting, I can't do it because of this, I can't do it because of that.
Yeah.
I very quickly implemented, you can work out on duty on your patrol squad, manpower permitting, calls for service permitting. And you still weren't getting the buy-in because they weren't doing it. The supervisors weren't buying into it.
Mm,
And so we really have struggled with that for so long. Um, Slowly but surely, we started making progress because in June 1 of 2023 was kind of the line in the sand. What I mean by that, everybody that was on board before June 1, 2023 were grandfathered in. So they have to test every single year. If you fail in the spring, you have to retest in the fall. If you pass in the spring, it's one and done. But everybody after June 1, it's a mandatory, you must pass, or you start the discipline process. Now, instead of one fail and you're getting fired, it's okay, now you're retesting. Okay, now we're going to start, maybe removing your extra jobs. Okay, now you might lose this
mm,
privilege where you're not going to be promoted, slowly working it down. So we've made those hires in the last couple of years. We have people that must pass the PT test. So we've seen our numbers come up.
yeah.
And then this year, the city council, and I've been petitioning for 5+ years for the city to give a wellness bonus because of the reasons we talked about. And finally, this year, I got the city to say, okay, for those that pass, it's $1,000.
Wow.
And so, one, they should be doing it because it's the right thing to do. But once some of them started hearing, I get $1,000,
Mm-hmm.
they said, okay, all right. And so we had people that were probably more borderline that just would not get out there and do what they needed to do. So, okay, for $1,000, I guess I'll do it. Okay, well, that's great. I can tell you this page, if I offered $100,000 to some of them, they'd still be like, no, I'm not doing it. I don't care what you offer me.
Yeah.
But we tested in April, and I'm excited when I say this. I know it sounds crazy, but now we're over 50% of the department is passing. So I feel like we have just now flipped the department.
Yep.
And so we have now the majority of our departments passing, and I have 5 new hires I've made in the last 2 months. And these are people that are either previous agencies or need to go to a police academy. Well, these are 5 people that I've hired that I already know they can pass it, but we do it on the front end.
Mm-hmm.
So once they hit the streets, that's 5 more I'm going to have that are passing. So I think now we're seeing the flip over where now the ones that aren't passing become the minority. And that's what you want. You want the swell to be that this is part of our culture. We've been implementing more personal training classes where we have personal trainers coming to our police department, or we're paired up with gyms where we have personal trainers and we're taking our officers there and going, we're working out as a group. And that includes me. So if there's group PT, I'm there. I believe you lead from the front. And I'm not the fastest, strongest by nothing. I'm older, 1990s, right?
Mhm.
But you have to lead from the front. You cannot ask your officers to do something that you're not willing to do. And then you really want your leadership promoting it, even if they may not be the fastest, strongest, whatever else, but they're trying to get their officers more fit. And now I hear in the hallways, people are talking about diets. People are talking about, you know, working out on their own. I see more of it because now it's becoming that's what the majority of us are doing. And so we're finally, I think, only this past year now flipping it.
Yeah. Wow, that is so cool. There are a few things that you said that I wanted to kind of mention again, but if someone fails, you're like, hey, what do we got to do to get you there? Like, we'll invest in a personal trainer for you. We'll invest in the gym membership for you. And this was obviously like beforehand. But we know that some people are motivated by the carrot and some
Yeah.
people are motivated by the stick. And it sounds like you kind of have both. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, if you pass, you get $1,000. That's pretty cool. That's a
Yeah.
lot of money.
Hmm.
That could help with bills, that could help
Hmm.
with Christmas presents, whatever. $1,000 is a lot. So for
Yeah.
someone to be like, wow, cool. Or maybe someone's not motivated by money at all, but they're motivated because they want to promote. They want certain opportunities within the organization, and they know that if they don't pass, they're not going to get those opportunities. And so I think that's a really unique approach that I haven't heard before. There was another agency, and I can't remember which agency it was, but I believe it was in Colorado. And they did something very similar in the sense that they were like, we are mandating this across the board. Like, we're having very high standards. We're going to mandate this, period. And there was that fear of losing people and people not passing. I think they did kind of what you did, where we're like, okay, we're going to build it up, we're going to get there, we're going to adjust, we're going to figure it out. And now, because they have such a high standard, they have a line wrapped around the door for people who want to work there. And it sounds like that's what's happening with you guys. You are retaining your staff, but you have a lot of people who are wanting to come and they want to work for an organization that has high standards and they want to work with a team that is operating at an elite level. And I also appreciate that you're willing to do the work too as a leader, because that's obviously very important.
You can't implement these policies and have any success if you're not willing to go out there and I call it get dirty with the guys, right? You have to get out there and do what they're asked to do. The challenge also, I mean, I agree with you and I appreciate it. You do have some people that seek us out because they know that's what we're doing.
Hmm.
But when we go out there and we're recruiting and we're trying to hire, we have limited our workforce pool now because a lot of the every other agency around here, basically, you can just walk in unless you need to go through a police academy. If you're already post certified, you can walk in, put on your uniform, go to work. Here, we're like, all right, first interview, great. When can you take your PT test? And that's shock and awe for a lot of these guys that are veterans. They go, wait a minute, what do you mean? Here are our standards. And so I've lost a lot of good, qualified people that cannot pass my PT test.
Yeah.
And I've had my supervisors come in, hey, can we bend the rules for John because he's awesome? Can't. I mean, we can't do that. And we had a guy in April, 1 second off the run, pass push-ups, pass the plank, 1 second off the run, and he was out, and the guys were, hey, can we just pass, this guy? I'm like, can't. I mean, the standard is the standard. We have to stay true to the process here. And I hated it. He lost $1,000 off of 1 second.
Mm.
But I think you have to keep pushing forward. It's been frustrating for me. It's made me think over the last 6 years, am I doing the right thing? And I've just said, we're going to stay the course. And again, I feel like we have finally flipped the script. We are now moving in a good direction. And I really think the most effective way to do this is peer pressure.
Mm.
And so as the ones that are coming on board, they're realizing the benefits now because they have lost weight, they're feeling, better physically, they're not as tired. They're reaping those benefits as they talk to their peers. That's more effective than just from the chief's office coming down, we're going to do this.
Yeah. Well, I want to kind of add to what you said is positive peer pressure.
Yeah,
And I think that a lot of times when we think peer pressure, we think of it in a negative way because it can be, right? If everyone is negative, if everyone's unhealthy, and everyone's judging each other, or, it can be really, really negative. But what you're talking about is positive peer pressure,
absolutely.
which is what we're looking for, right? So I did want to talk a little bit about your mental health efforts.
Yeah,
There are a few things that you guys have done in that area too, and one of them is a little doggy that's currently taking a nap next to you. So, can you
yes, I
talk a
do.
little bit about some of the efforts that you've made from a mental health perspective and some of the things that you're seeing as a result of those efforts?
Yeah, so let me back it up 2 years. Ray's our dog, and I'll bring that up here in a minute. But again, I really think that there's a lot of factors that involve a police officer coming to duty. We have to be our best when somebody's having their worst day, when somebody's been a victim of a crime, somebody even got in a bad accident. They're having one of their worst days, and then we have to be the best version of ourselves. And how can we do that? Well, we're people. We have financial issues, spouse issues, children. I mean, we have a lot of things going on in our lives, and then we come to work. And most of our officers work just other than one job to make the ends meet because we don't make a lot of money. So many things that are a factor, let alone what we see over our career, the trauma events that we see and what that can do to us. And so I had gone to a class and, talked to some other chiefs. And I hate saying this, but I'll say it very nicely. I'm from the South. I'm born and raised in Alabama. I love it here. Was born and raised in Mobile, and this is my place. But I find down here that we don't often do things on the front end, that we do it very slowly, even though other agencies and other parts of the country are doing it. So when I get a chance to travel for training, I love going out of my region
Mm.
because you don't want to stay in your same bubble. You want to go out there and see what other people are doing and see what would work here. And I went somewhere and I was talking to other chiefs that were implementing mental health programs. Well, again, I came in 1996, Paige. Mental health, that was not even something that came out of your mouth. And this was not just in 1996. This has been for quite a few years. The stigma associated with mental health and police officers was if I say I have a problem, they're taking my gun and my badge. I mean, that's just how we felt about it. And so nobody talked about mental health. We had a very unhealthy way with dealing with the stressors of the job. And that was, us going around, grabbing the boys, going to the bar, having some drinks and talking about our day and not the way we should be doing it, but that's the way that we were handling it back then because you could not go see a professional. Our younger generation is much more open to mental health. They seek it on their own. They actually now start expecting for whoever their employer is, not just law enforcement, but to offer services if they need it. And so I was listening to other chiefs talk about it. I said, I'm going to roll the dice on this. I got a feeling this is going to be not well received. And so we had a leadership retreat. I think it was in November one year, and I brought it up. I said, what would y'all think about if we did mandatory mental health checks? And it was silence. They're like, everybody around the room was like, well, I don't need anybody. I don't need anybody. I don't need anybody. I said, good. I said, do you think there are people in our department that do, that
Mhm.
are scared to go seek it because if they do, that something's going to happen to them? Well, like, yeah, well, I heard so and so's had some issues. I'm like, well, I've heard as well. And they're all scared to death to go talk to a therapist because they feel like if they ever get found out that they're going to be put behind a desk, their guns taken away. I said, it's not about a fitness for duty. That's a completely different thing that we do sometimes. This is about, hey, opening a door for somebody to be there to talk about your kids and the finances, or maybe it is about a stress event that we witness on duty. I let it breathe for a little bit. I brought it up like one more time in a meeting. And then I said, a few months later, I said, okay, guess what? We're doing it. Here's the policy. And again, pushback, which I would expect. And I explained to them, if you don't need a therapist, great. But I assure you, there are people in this department that do. Now, here's the rule. We all will go in. I'll take the first appointment. You can walk in the door, and we actually, let me back it up a second. While we were in that process of kind of letting it breathe, I found one department one department in the state of Alabama that was doing it. And so I reached out to that chief, talked to him about what happened when he implemented it. He paired me up with his therapist, talked to her about it, and I was sold in
Mm.
the successes they were having. And I asked her, would you help me find a therapist? Because we're not going to walk in and go into a cold door and see somebody for the first time and talk to them. I said, it ain't happening. And so I really credit her. She researched it. She found me a new therapist here locally. She was an Army vet. She had a husband that died. She has tattoos. She cusses. She's like one of the guys. And I was like, I like her. I met her. Said, this might work. I said, will you start coming around? And so I implemented it and said, hey, we're going to do this. This is our therapist. We're just going to let her start coming around. She started doing ride-alongs. She just started sitting in some meetings, and the guys just started getting to know her, not as a therapist, but as a person.
Mm.
And so when we implemented it, saying, October 1, whatever the date was, we're going to go see her. I took the first appointment, but here's the rule. You walk in the door, that's all you have to do. You can take a nap, you can play games on your phone, you can read a book. You can just, all you have to do is just walk in the door. You don't have to talk to her. And so I have a guy that goes now. We've done it twice now. I got a guy that goes each year, takes a book for 1 hour and reads and will not talk to her. Perfectly fine. Have other guys that go in there and talk about football, whatever else. Perfectly fine. I have, after the first year when we did our mandatory check, gave it about 3 months. I said, is anybody else coming back to see you? 40% of the department.
Wow.
I talked to her about 2 weeks ago because I knew we were going to do this podcast. I said, what's the percentage now? 40% of the department
Wow.
are seeking her out aside from our mandatory once a year walk in the door check. I now hear people in the hallways, yep, I have an appointment with her tomorrow. I have an appointment next week with her. Oh, yeah, she helped me with this. And this was a surprise to me. I mean, I really thought this one was going to fall flat. And I'm really proud of that because that's 40% of my department that we're not going.
Mm.
And I don't need to know. The first year, I think, was the first of the hardest year because they're worried. Is she going to, spill the beans to the chief? And the only thing I need to know is if they're homicidal, suicidal. I don't need to hear about anything else going on. Homicidal, suicidal. First year came and passed. Nobody got brought into the office about why'd you badmouth the chief or why'd you badmouth this policy. She
Yeah.
doesn't tell me that. I don't want to know that. And so now I think we have built that confidentiality with her where people do know they can see her and talk about whatever it is. She's not running back. She's not a mole for me. And I'm so proud that that program is really taking off. They are very open to it. And that even the co-pays are paid by the foundation. So they're walking in the door and it's a free visit
Yeah.
when we do our check.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I actually think it's very smart for you to first introduce her as a human and
Yep.
just have her coming around before implementing anything as mandatory, because then it makes that first step so much easier. So I think that was a really smart strategy. I also think that we have to get out of our own way sometimes. We have our own way of thinking, and sometimes our thought processes can be limited, and I love that you asked that secondary question when you asked leadership in your team first, what do you think? And everyone was like, well, I don't need it. And that secondary question was so important. Well, do you think that other people in the organization need it? And this is us stepping out of our own way. Just because something isn't impactful to you doesn't mean it's not impactful for other people. Just
Mhm.
because you don't feel like you need something doesn't mean other people don't need it. So I love that you asked that question. Well, do you think other people? And they were like, yes. And then turns out 40% are now coming back for more frequent visits. That's
Yeah.
great. Like, what an
Yeah.
ROI for you to try it and for you to say, I don't know if it's going to work. I actually think it might not work, but let's
Yeah.
try it, and let's try it for more than just 1 year and see, what happens after that first year. And now you have 40% who are going back. To me, that's the greatest return on investment is if you have built trust to where people within your organization now feel safe to be able to seek the resources that they need.
When we implemented it, I talked in one of the chiefs' luncheons that we were doing it, and all the chiefs were like, "Phew, good luck." And I was like, yeah, we'll see what happens. And so after we had our first visits and I started talking about, how it was received, a lot of them were like, well, how'd you do that? And so we started having conversation. I had one chief in particular with an agency we work closely with. She was really interested in it. And then before she could pull the trigger on it, one of her captains committed suicide. And out of the blue, not expected. And he committed suicide. It was within a month of that. She said, hey, can we have coffee? And she said, okay, what are you doing? And so I said, here's what we're doing. Here's our therapist. Why don't you just meet with her? And so that department now is using our therapist and they are seeing the same return. And it's interesting. I told you, Paige, I talked to that one department in Alabama before I did it. It was 40% for them. It's weird. And I don't know her exact numbers, but I know when I talked to our therapist, she says very similar return. And so that just tells me there's a lot of things going out there with our men and women. And if that's one thing that helps them through the day, through the month, be able to talk to somebody in confidence, we just got to do that in law enforcement. We got to take care of our people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that by you sharing your success, that creates that ripple effect. Now there's another organization that's benefiting from this. And I think it's a really important reminder that you guys are not on your own siloed islands. You guys are stronger together. How can you share ideas? How can you share the things that are working for you that could also benefit other people? And sometimes, unfortunately, it takes a big event for people to, start putting things into action. But my hope is that through these conversations, there's more of that forward thinking and that proactive effort, and that other people will, maybe step out of their comfort zone and try something new, even if they don't know how it's going to go.
Well, and you said it earlier in the conversation, and it's true. We can't quantify what has not happened. We can't quantify, has this program prevented a suicide? Has this program prevented a divorce or, the other things that go on in our lives? I mean, we can't quantify that, but I just know it's working.
Yeah.
If our people are going there seeking it, that is a positive thing that's happening here. So I'm very proud of that program. The other thing that you mentioned, and something I can always smile about, is I'm a
I
dog guy.
know. I was like, we have to bring it back up before we
We got to
wrap for
talk
the
about
day.
our
We got to
dogs.
talk about your dog.
Yeah, and if I could, I know it's not going to work here because he's going to be too small. But he's a big poodle though. So I was at the IECP Wellness Conference, and I
Mhm.
hope you attend that or go to that.
I've heard
Um,
of it. Yeah.
yeah, it's a great conference, and I'd gone to that back in like 2017. It started giving me ideas and stuff, and I went there a few months ago. I actually wanted a dog like this when I first got here. The city was like, we're not using taxpayer dollars to buy you a support dog. It's not going to be well received. I said, well, I disagree with you. Um, reached out to the foundation. At that time, financially, they were not there. Over the years, they've grown and have more financial support. And so at the IACP, just I think it was in March, and it's about officer wellness.
Hmm.
And there were tons of support dogs that
Hmm.
were at the conference. And so the president of the foundation was there. I was there, worked out right. She talked to the person that had one of those support dogs, had a company that puts them out, and she was sold. And so our foundation said, we'll buy the dog. And so myself and one of my lieutenants flew out in the first part of April to Bend, Oregon, uh, to go get this dog and train with him, who started off as a CNI dog.
Hmm.
He's a fifth generation service dog, but he has a couple issues. One, he's very social. He just wants to go up to people and birds and squirrels and balls. He has it ingrained in him. And so he'll lunge at a bird or a squirrel. And if you're a blind person, that's not a good thing. And they could not break him of that habit, but that's typical with this breed. And so they sent him from Palm Springs, California to Oregon, where they did the service dog program. And he's got three missions here. First mission is officer wellness, right? And most people, I think, are dog people. I do. Dogs just kind of make you smile. They release tension. They kind of have a calming effect. And so for our officers and our dispatchers, he's here. And I can tell you, our officers come off the streets and they see Ray and they'll stop what they're doing and they get down on their knees and they pet Ray and Ray goes up to them. He hangs out with dispatchers when they're just doing their job. He's always in the office when I'm here in the office. Well, that's a very positive thing. I think it reduces stress.
Mhm.
And then from a community engagement standpoint, I've had him now 5 weeks, and we go to a lot of meetings, events, and different things that go on within the city. And I can tell you in 5 weeks, I've had more conversations with people because of Ray than I ever would have had if it was just me standing in a uniform. He opens a door for us to be able to engage with people that otherwise wouldn't. We've been at elementary schools, middle school, daycares. I mean, it's just amazing. He's a rock star. And then when we have victims that come in here, and they're having their bad day, and we had a child in here this morning, he goes in the interview rooms. He has that calming effect as well. And so we are just happy to have him. What a great addition, kind of another mechanism where our officers go, we're investing in you.
Mhm.
Your wellness is important. And, even having this dog around here, I mean, he was at the PT test when we were doing our PT test. And as they're running by, he's worried about him. He's training cortisol. So he'll hit on cortisol, which is a stress hormone,
Yep.
just like you can train a dog to hit on cocaine. So if we got a room full of people, he will say hello on his own to everybody. Just walk up to him and kind of put his head on him. If he senses cortisol, he'll put his whole body on him and
Yep.
kind of just hug them almost. And the officers know that he's training cortisol. They're going, yeah, I'm having a bad day. So
Yeah.
I think it's funny. They've embraced it. Everybody kind of laughs. But we all have bad days. And this dog is just kind of there to kind of be a support mechanism for them. And that's been well received. I can tell
Yeah.
you, I don't know anybody here that said we don't need this dog. And because the foundation bought it, the public is behind it, and we didn't use taxpayer dollars for it. So I think that's the one argument you could try to make, which I don't think is a valid argument, but not even one that we did. And so we're very proud of that implementation. Another step about taking care of our officers and of course the community that we work with.
Yeah. I've said this before, but I always crack up every time I go to a conference and you see all the dogs, because there's always a handful of them, right, that
Yeah,
are there. And you'll see the most intimidating, straight-faced dude just rolling around on the ground with these
yeah,
dogs, and he's so happy. And they really teach you how to be present. And they do encourage more positive interactions, right?
yeah,
And so I do think that it's really cool. I actually have a story. I was presenting at a conference and I was very stressed. I was just very nervous about, this keynote. And I was in the room with the service dogs and I was petting one of them. It was a Dalmatian, actually. And he did that. He like laid on me and put all of his weight on me and almost like kind of knocked me backwards. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like, he loves me.
yeah.
I was like so excited. I'm like, he loves me. I'm his favorite. And the handler was like, actually, no, it's a technique. It's called the weighted blanket. And he's trained to do that when he senses that someone is really stressed. And I looked at the dog and I was like, why are you calling me out? Why are you telling everybody that I'm stressed out right now? And it was just kind of like a funny thing. And we all laughed. But yeah, there's no denying it at
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
Um, my final question for you
Yep.
before we wrap for the day is for that younger generation, what words of wisdom would you share with them that maybe you wish you would have known when you were younger? So if you could take all of your knowledge and go back in time and talk to your younger self, what would you say?
You know, this sounds cliche, but it's so true. But it's the hardest thing to do when you're a young police officer that intends on making this your career. Like I started when I was 21 years old. I dropped out of college at that point to be a police officer because I was like, I want to do this. And I was all about police work. I mean, I lived it, breath, ate it up every single day. I just loved it. And I went into narcotics as a young officer. And when you're in narcotics, you can work nonstop, and you do work nonstop. And, I'm very proud of my career, and it's gotten me to the point I am today. And I made a lot of mistakes over those years. But having that life balance is what I would always try to talk to our officers about. That when you're a rookie, It's all you're wearing the t-shirts with the thin blue line, and you want everybody to know you're a police officer, and you're proud, and you should be proud. But you got to have that life balance. And, at the end of the day, when, where careers are winding down, we like all our plaques on the walls and all of our accolades, but it's really about the people that you've impacted. And hopefully you've, impacted people in a positive way. Hopefully you have a family. Hopefully you have a stable family and you've been able to take care of them. And can you shed that when you walk in the door? Always was my hardest thing. You have that day at work and all the things that you've dealt with, and then you're walking in the door to your wife and kids, and now you have to be a completely different person. It's hard to shut off. And so, finding that way to do that early in your life, I think will benefit you in your career as you get older. I can tell you, I'm one of those classic police officers. I've had more than one wife. I've had those issues that come with the job. And I wish I would have done things differently when I was younger, when it dealt with that life balance. And so in the last 10 years, I've changed. I've, been more mature. I've got into, I'm all about my work. I'm professional. I want to be doing the best I can do at my job. But in order for me to do that, I have to have a balance outside of this job. And so I've taken on traveling, I've taken on mountain climbing and hiking. And now, in short order, I've been to 55 different countries. I was at Mount Everest Base Camp in December this last year. I mean, I've been on many different mountains, and I use that as a release. I use that as a way for me to learn. I like immersing myself in a different culture, in a different country, and then seeing, okay, if I'm in this country that I have no status in and I'm a visitor, how does that make me feel as a visitor? And then thinking, how can we implement some of that here when we're dealing with people at our department, in our community that might be not necessarily even from out of the country, but they're coming through and they encounter law enforcement. I've encountered law enforcement, in a professional way in these different countries, and I'm scared, right? You don't know what's going to happen, and when you have that positive encounter, you're like, wow, that was amazing. When you have that negative encounter, it's brought me to go, okay, we need to make sure we're being more positive on that front end when people are just like absolutely petrified when they're having to interact with us. And so my advice again for young people, finding that work balance with your life, and you want to be successful at both, and that is extremely difficult to do.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your words of wisdom and also the things that you've been able to implement and your philosophy on wellness. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for the invite.
Of course. We'll stay in touch for sure.
Okay.